Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome to this latest episode. And today we are going to talk about call tracking. And when I thought about doing an episode on call tracking, I was specifically thinking about dynamic number insertion, the things that we do on a website where if somebody comes from SEO or PPC or from another different channel, they see a different phone number. It is a dynamic third-party solution, a piece of code that goes on your website that basically swaps out the phone number and shows a different phone number based on where the audience came from. Now, that's what I thought I was going to cover, but as I was digging into call tracking, just became apparent that this is a lot bigger topic than what I was hoping for. So I will go over that a little bit. I know there's different ways in which people do call tracking, but in this episode, I will talk about what call tracking is, how call tracking works, what the evolution of call tracking has been, and then give you some pros of call tracking, mostly data-driven insights, how it makes every marketer's dream come true, because the information that you have from call tracking gives you all kinds of details about attribution, where the sale happened, how it happened, which keyword drove it. And then it also allows you an opportunity to improve your customer experience with your brand, with your company. So those are the main pros of call tracking, and many businesses recognize that and they do it. But there's also a few cons, things that are challenging to overcome when it comes to call tracking. And in this day and age, privacy is a big concern, and so is as it is a concern during call tracking as well. And no matter how sophisticated the system, there's always integration challenges. There's cost considerations that you have to take as well. And then there's also the idea that if the numbers are different, are my customers going to be worried about it? Are my visitors to my website going to be worried that the phone number is different? Or in that worst case scenario, when the customer or client has saved your phone number and all of a sudden you switch platforms and now that phone number doesn't work. We're going to talk about all that and more in this episode, so let's get started. Welcome to the latest episode of Corner Your Market. I'm your host, Sailes Kimide. In this podcast, I talk about all things digital marketing, from website design and development to SEO and PPC, as well as paid advertising, email marketing, social media, and anything in between. If you're a small business owner, a marketing manager in a company, or an entrepreneur, this podcast is for you. So tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. You'll gain some practical insights, new strategies, tactics, and tools that will help you grow your business. To subscribe, go to corneryourmarketpodcast.com and select the podcast app of your choice. Then you can hit subscribe within those apps. That again is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Also, don't forget to like and share our individual episodes. You can also leave a review in the app once you've listened to one of our episodes. In today's episode, we are going to talk about call tracking. I just noticed that I keep saying we in this podcast. It's just me. So if you're tuning in for the very first time and you go, we, well, it's just me. So anyway, today I'm going to be talking about call tracking. And it's a relevant topic because in marketing, obviously, when you're doing digital marketing, you're driving people through media to a particular page or a website or some kind of a messaging center where, an ad or something like that. And people are going to, you're asking them to do something, right? And one of the main things that you ask them to do is call, because business, for the most part, doesn't happen until you actually have some kind of a human interaction. Now, retail, WooCommerce, e-commerce, that kind of stuff, I get it. You can sell those things. But for most of the companies that I work with, service-based companies where they actually have to talk to somebody, yeah, I know. This might make Gen Z feel unsafe, but you have to talk to somebody. And so you call somebody, right? So when you're on the back end of marketing, the client asks you, so how many calls did we get from this ad? Or how many form fills did we get? That's an easy one to track because it's digital. Somebody fills out a form, you can see in Google Analytics how many people filled out the form and all that kind of stuff. That's not a problem. The problem comes up with the actual phone calls. And the phone calls tend to be more valuable in some ways because, somebody actually made an effort to call you. They were interested. They wanted to do something with you, right? So call tracking is an important concept in that regards. But then as I was kind of digging through the materials for this podcast, I realized that call tracking actually is bigger than that. The kind of call tracking that I interface with is dynamic number insertion, DNI, where when somebody comes to a website, they see a different phone number based on how they came. So if they came from SEO, they see a different phone number. If they came from PPC, they see a different phone number. And then Google's forwarding system basically only swaps it out if they came in through their ad and things like that. So there's those levels, but then there's a whole different level of call tracking that companies and businesses do that is just way bigger than that. So we'll touch on that a little bit. So in this episode, what I want to do is I want to talk about what is call tracking. I want to talk about how call tracking works and discuss a little bit about the evolution of call tracking. And then also delve into the pros and cons, right? Because I've had 2 clients in the last, I would say, year that have opted out of call tracking, and mostly because of the cons and legit cons. And so I can't convince them to come back to call tracking, but I want to share those cons with you to see what you think. And I'd love to hear from you to see what your experience is with call tracking and things like that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get started. So the first, let's see here. I gotta kind of get everything together here for you guys. So the first thing we're going to talk about is call tracking. What is call tracking? Call tracking is basically a method used in digital marketing to track and measure phone calls generated from digital marketing campaigns, right? That's the way I'm defining it. Now, the bigger ones, there's call tracking like your call may be monitored for quality control purposes. That's also a form of call tracking. That's for different operational needs and that a business might have. But in this case, call tracking is a method used in digital marketing to track and measure phone calls generated from digital marketing campaigns. So how does call tracking work for the most part? It involves basically assigning a unique phone number to each digital marketing campaign or ad. Now that's going to be a little bit tricky, right? So you can say, for instance, Google My Business page has this phone number, SEO has this phone number, PPC has this phone number, radio gets this phone number, television gets this phone number. That way you know if somebody calls that, right? But it's a little tricky on the website because people could be coming from different sources, right? And that's where the dynamic number insertion comes in. It sees where you're coming from and then swaps out the number accordingly. And then it says you came from SEO and all that kind of stuff. So pretty sophisticated stuff there. That's DNI. DNI basically allows displaying a unique phone number for each ad campaign source rather than only showing one main phone number. So basically the unique numbers are then routed to the main number via call forwarding when somebody calls. So you call 480-555-1212 and the phone actually rings at 480-555-1211. And that last number, the 1211, might be the main phone number of that business, but the customer saw the first number that ended in 12. So that's what the call forwarding system does. Basically, DNI inserts the tracking numbers in real time into online ads, landing pages, emails, pay-per-click ads, print materials, and more. Advertising platforms like Google, Facebook have integrations that support swapping the numbers dynamically. I know Google will, if you do a Google Ads campaign and somebody comes to your website from the Google Ads campaign, they know they came from Google Ads. So when they arrive at your website, they basically swap out the phone number on your website. On the back end, call tracking tools manage generating and displaying the numbers as needed for each campaign. So the platform that I'm the most familiar with is CallRail. This is not an endorsement, but CallRail basically, the basic package, at least when I used to set it up 4 or 5 years ago, the basic package gave you 10 phone numbers of which 8 were in the pool, and then 2 were specific that you could assign to specific things. So those 2 were not in the pool. And obviously, depending on how much you pay, you could make sure that those phone numbers are in the same the area code that you're in, so that it matches the area code, which can be important to some people, right? If you're a doctor's office, maybe you don't want to call a doctor that's in New York if you're in Arizona, or at least feel like you're calling a doctor in New York. But I don't think people are really tied to numbers. That's a later discussion. And then basically CallRail would then put those 8 in a pool, and then those pool, depending on how much call volume you get, 8 might not be enough, but you just have 8 in case you have 8 people come to your website at the same time. At least 8 people get 8 different phone numbers, right? So that's the idea behind the 8 there. So it seemed to work really well for a lot of our customers, actually. So nothing to complain there. And then in the back end, you can basically run reports and see, okay, I got 34 calls from SEO, 25 calls from PPC, 5 were direct, meaning they came directly to the website, 3 from my mailer campaign, whatever, right? So you can do those kind of analysis. And then it also shows you on the back end how long the call lasted, what the phone number was of the person calling, and depending on what packages you have, you can even record the calls and all that kind of stuff. And then you also have to make sure that you abide by certain laws and things like that, but they take care of that for you. So that's basically the way it works. And there's, as you can see from a marketing standpoint, it can be quite valuable, right? The data from call tracking can help you optimize future marketing campaigns by identifying platforms, ads, keywords that are generating the most calls and best conversions. I mean, especially if you're using like Google's native call tracking for their PPC campaigns, you can really see some really interesting things from the calls for the call. And then how you can drill down to which keywords are driving the most calls, which keywords, which ads, which time of day is driving calls and things like that. So there can be some very, very good information that you get out of that. Again, I mentioned CallRail, but some of the other ones are Dialog Tech, Call Tracking Metrics, Active Call, Invoca, Dialpad is another one that I've come across recently. So call tracking, basically, in summary, is attributing inbound calls to digital sources, allowing marketers to see their ROI and optimize their spend across digital platforms. It can be an essential part or tool for today's data-driven multi-channel marketing. And that data, and like any piece of data, is conversion data that Google and your platform can use and feed into their machine learning algorithms and AI systems to optimize your ad in a way that maybe you wouldn't be able to do just on your own. So that is what is call tracking. Now let's talk a little bit about the evolution of call tracking. Obviously, we're all familiar with the 800 numbers. In the 1980s, call tracking basically emerged as dedicated 800 numbers. And that was a way for marketers to track calls coming in. So if you were doing television advertising, call this number 800, 800, 900, 901, or whatever. And each ad might have a different 800 number. They were pretty expensive, I would imagine, back then to buy an 800 number. But that's the way that they tracked it, right? And in the 1990s, you had some advancements allowing assigning unique phone numbers to each ad source and redirecting calls to a main business line. So more data became available. You could customize it a little bit more. Early 2000s, the internet and digital marketing took off. Call tracking expanded to track online ads and website performance. Mid-2000s, call tracking integrated with CRM systems and marketing automation platforms to attribute calls to customer records. In the 2010s, mobile and social media marketing increased, and then call tracking adapted to track calls from these digital channels. Today, in the 2020s, call tracking is more sophisticated, tracking multi-channel campaigns, recording calls, providing in-depth analytics on conversions, integrating with marketing and sales software stacks, and all that kind of stuff. And then where's the future going to be? Who knows? But AI is probably going to be a part of it. AI integration will further analyze conversions for insights, I'm sure. And there's going to be a lot more data, a lot more in-depth analysis that you can do, and probably a lot more sophisticated technologies will emerge in how to do call tracking. So basically, call tracking has evolved from the basic use in print ads in today's advanced software tracking, complex omni-channel marketing, and providing actionable data and insights. And it is assumed to continue adapting to marketing technology innovations well into the future. Okay, so now that you know what call tracking is and their history and all that kind of stuff, let's talk about the pros and cons, right? I'm going to start with pros. As a marketer, there's a vested interest in marketing teams and even businesses in being able to track customer calls, right? Any good business is going to want to track a customer call because, there's just a lot to gain from it. Call tracking provides some very valuable data. So let's say you're a service provider in 5 metro areas, like a Phoenix metro area, and you want to know where all your calls are coming from. If all your calls are coming from Mesa and the East Valley, for instance, you may not want to advertise in the West Valley, right? Or you may want to focus your targeting in that area where you're getting a lot more than other areas. So there's just a lot. Just from a fundamental level, there's just a lot of data you can get. And some of the sources that I looked at were saying, like, call analytics company like Dialogue Tech found that companies see an average increase in marketing ROI of 12% after implementing call tracking. Now, does call tracking help you increase ROI? No. But the data and the information you get from call tracking allows you to optimize your marketing dollars, optimize your message, optimize your experience to be able to drive that 12% increase in ROI, right? That's substantial. 12% is no joke. CallRail has done some research as well and has found that companies using call tracking software have 73% higher conversion rates compared to those who don't. Now, I don't know how they did the study. It's an interesting number, but definitely showing the value of call tracking, right? Now, according to Dial 800, this is an interesting one. 60% of consumers prefer to speak to a company by phone rather than email web from when making a purchase, right? So because of that, call tracking just helps you optimize. It just helps you optimize because 60% of the people are going to want to talk to somebody on the phone rather than email and web forms, right? So you record those conversations, you find out where they came from, and it could be a treasure trove of data and information. So that's one of the main value propositions there. So by accurately attributing phone calls to campaigns and analyzing the call data, marketers can optimize spend towards higher converting platforms and campaigns, and that's basically how you squeeze out more ROI. Now, there's also improved marketing attribution. That's also important because sometimes Google takes all the credit, right? Google basically always takes all the credit. It's like, at least when you're working in analytics platforms, you're like 90% of conversions came from Google. Yeah, but they might have called 3 times before they actually did the Google search to actually do this, right? So let's get all this attribution going here. So lead matching is another way, is you now have a phone number for somebody that called you and set an appointment. So you can go through and see what the dollar value is when they come in for the service, right? So now you can go back and say, okay, this is the client's phone number. Let's look in our database. Oh, they called on the 15th. And oh, they came from Facebook ads. Oh, they saw this ad. Oh, they were in this location. Oh, this is what drove them to do this. Oh, and I see 5 other conversions from the same ad. Oh, wonderful. This ad is really working well on Facebook. Let me do a couple of other copies of this and different variations and see if I can even get more ROI out of this ad. That's how it works. That's lead matching. There's tracking pixels, there's CRM. A lot of those happen because you have tracking pixels, you have CRM integration, right? You have to have the phone numbers flowing into your CRM that also connects to your fulfillment database so that you can marry the 2 pieces of data and things like that. So very, very good stuff there. And then, so attribution, that's the important thing. Now, the third benefit, so we talked about two benefits. The third benefit is enhanced customer experience. So by, listening in to the calls, like this call will be monitored for quality control purposes. You can listen in on those and see what's happening. You can also look at hangups. You could also look at length of call. You could also look at maybe, missed dials. You can also look at, there's just so much you can look at. So you can enhance the customer experience, because if they can't get a hold of you, there might be some other problems that's happening on the other end. Now, there is one issue. Okay, so those are the three benefits, right? So marketing attribution, ROI, and then the customer experience would be the three main benefits of call tracking. Now let's talk a little bit about the cons and the challenges of call tracking. So the main one is privacy. There are some potential privacy issues and regulations to consider when call tracking. You have to, especially if you're recording, you have to give consumer consent. You have to let them know that this call is being tracked for, quality control purposes. There's data protection issues. Are you abiding by data, especially if you're in a medical field and there's HIPAA regulations and things like that, you have to make sure that that data is protected and that you only collect necessary data. And then there's call disclosures. There might be local laws in place that requires disclosing that calls are being recorded and consenting before the call proceeds. There's PCI compliance. Payment card data is subject to PCI standards. Collection and storage procedures should adhere to compliance. There's the data retention. How long do you retain this data for? And what is the risk of retaining it for longer or shorter? There's also sensitive information. If there's sensitive information being passed on during the conversation while the call is being tracked, that could be an area where you need to make sure that you are not violating any laws. Transparency, that you need to clearly communicate to customers what data is being collected and how it is handled through terms and service or privacy policies on your website. And then, there might be wiretapping laws, wiretapping laws. And there's different laws by different states. So usually if you use a platform, I'm not a high-end user of this, but if you use some of the more standard, well-known services like the ones I mentioned, I think they take care of all those things. So you just have to abide by their rules and just do what they allow you to do and not go outside of that. And if you do that, you will be okay. But again, very important to stay aware of the risks that you are taking in this process. Now, the second benefit is there are integration challenges. Sometimes we sell these things like they're seamless, right? Like that example that I just gave you. This customer called and this became a customer and now I can go back and trace it back to my Facebook ad and the ad. It doesn't always work that way, right? According to CallRail, over 50% of companies cite integration difficulties as a top barrier to adopting call tracking. Now, any business is going to have their own platform of phone numbers and systems integrated with their IT. Everything's connected now, right? So introducing another layer of tracking on top of that can be challenging. So don't underestimate the challenges that you might come across when you are considering doing call tracking. Now, some of the ones that I've worked with, like CallRail, the integration is pretty simple. You just have to install, especially if you have WordPress, you just install the CallRail plugin, and then the CallRail gives you a piece of code. You put it in, and boom, you're done. That's simple because that's just DNI over the website, and then you just turn on the recording features and things like that over on the CallRail side. So they're tracking everything for you. But other systems might be more complicated. I know I've talked to customers and clients who've had some pretty interesting and difficult situations working with Dialpad, for instance. So I don't know why. I'm not saying it's a bad system. I'm just saying that they've had issues. So something to think about. Now, that's the second one, is the integration challenges, which is really also a cost consideration if you think about it. Depending on how sophisticated you want your call tracking system to be and how exhaustive it's going to be and what it's going to track and the depth of information that you need, you might be looking at some pretty big, hefty systems there. So cost is definitely a consideration as well. So you need to keep that in mind. That's the third one. So we talked about privacy being the first challenge, integration being the second challenge, cost being the third challenge. And now I want to talk a little bit closer to home, client reactions to DNI, right? There's one issue with dynamic number, interchange, or DNI, dynamic number interchange, I think is what it's called. The numbers change, right? So you could go to the same website over 5 days and get 5 different phone numbers, which brings up an interesting question. What does that say to your visitor about your business? Couple of things. Will people remember those numbers? I mean, are they going to realize that the numbers are the same every day? No, they're not going to realize that. However, if they do use a particular number and happen to save it on their cell phone, and then the next time they're just going to keep calling that number, right? But what if you change platforms? What if you decide to not do this anymore? Now all of a sudden you might have 35 customers out there with these numbers saved on their phones, and they're trying to make an appointment with you and they can't get a hold of you because the number is not working. Now, if your service has been great and they're committed to you, they're going to Google you, they're going to find you, and they're going to get the new number. And they're going to come in and they're going to complain to the office staff and say, whatever, this happened. You guys have a new number, blah, blah, blah. And your office staff is going to explain, no, that's not what happened, blah, blah. We got rid of the call, blah, blah, blah. That's the best case scenario, right? The worst case scenario is you lose the customers, right? Because they can't get a hold of you. They Google, they find somebody else. Oh, this guy's closer. Oh, this guy has 5-star review. Oh, this guy has an offer. Oh, and they all of a sudden go over there. So that's like the worst case scenario. I am just with the changing way in which we interact with technology. I mean, there used to be a time, now gather around the fireplace, young ones here. There used to be a time when we all memorized phone numbers, right? Now, that time is not now. I don't even know my daughter's phone numbers. I don't. I know my parents' phone numbers because I memorized it as a kid, but I don't remember my daughter's phone numbers because I have not memorized it as an adult. It's in my phone, and hopefully my iPhone is backed up. So if ever a case comes up, I need to enter it back in. I know it. But my point is this. I know that was a little bit of a long-winded way of saying, do people really save business phone numbers on their phone? My hunch is no. And my hunch is no especially for people under the age of 50. The reason why I say 50 is because I'm almost 50. I don't think my peers and younger are remembering phone numbers and writing them down, putting it in their system, right? So they're just going to call whatever number is on the website. Like my family's been going to the same dentist for the last 3 years. I don't have their phone saved in their phone, my phone number, my email, my thing. When they send me a reminder notice, I just call them back based on the number that it comes from and confirm the appointment, right? I might do the same thing for other services, like the pest control guy, right? He's coming in a couple of days. He just calls me and says, you're due for your quarterly, treatment. And I say, okay, fine. And then that's it. And then if I ever need to get a hold of him, I have invoices that I save from him. I just go to the invoice and I call that number. So I know everybody's different. I'm not saying that my standard's the rule and everybody does that, but I'm just wondering if that is even the case. So if you're listening to this and you made it this far, first of all, give yourself a pat in the back and say, wow, I am amazing because you've made it this far. But if you're listening, I would love to hear from you to see how you, whether or not you save phone numbers or not, because this would really help me eliminate this as a con from using call tracking, because literally I've had a few customers and clients over the years say that they don't want to do this because of that very reason. And I just haven't really felt like that was a strong enough reason, because the amount of information and conversion data that you get that helps you improve ROI far outweighs of worrying about a few of your customers or clients saving their numbers and not being able to get a hold of you. Your SEO is already good. If somebody did even just Googled you, within 30 seconds, they'd have your phone number again anyway. So but I still list that as a con, just because I just don't know how to address that one. Personally, I would do DNI, but some people don't. So I just thought I'd bring that up. So curious to hear about your thoughts on this, and just send me an email, and then I'd be happy to cover it in another episode or something like that. So anyway, so let's see. I think we have come towards the end here. So in this episode, we talked about call tracking. I gave you an introduction to call tracking. We talked about what is call tracking, how call tracking works, the evolution of call tracking, the pros of call tracking, all the data-driven insights you can get, improved marketing attribution, enhanced customer experience. We also talked about the cons and challenges of call tracking, primarily when it relates to privacy, integration, cost, and finally, customer behavior, on whether or not they like the idea of saving your phone number or not. So anyway, it's been a wonderful episode. Glad you're able to join me. So with that, I say have a great day and enjoy marketing your business. If you're a small business owner, a marketer in a company, or an entrepreneur, this podcast is for you. You'll become better educated and informed when it comes to digital marketing. And if you implement the strategies, tactics, and tools I discuss in this podcast, your business will grow and prosper. To subscribe, go to corneryourmarketpodcast.com. That again is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. You can also search for Corner Your Market in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast, and you can subscribe through those apps. Also, don't forget to like and share our individual episodes. You can also leave a review. Finally, I would love to hear from you, so if you have any questions, feedback, or general comments about the topics I discuss, feel free to send me an email. I will be sure to share and discuss your feedback on the air if it will benefit our listening audience. You can write to me at connect@corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Just put listener comment in the subject line. That email again is connect@corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. I look forward to being back next week. Until then, be good and do good.